The second is the issue of ownership. Ownership. Which goes a little beyond innocence. Innocence is just a categoric definition. Ownership personalizes it with God. And I'll show you this from a number of Old Testament passages. Jeremiah chapter 1. Jeremiah chapter 1. Here we have Jeremiah introducing himself as the son of Hilkiah, one of the priests in Anatoth in the land of Benjamin. The word of the Lord came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. Came also in the days of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, until the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, in the exile of Jerusalem in the 5th month. And this is the whole thing leading up to exile. And then verse 4, now the word of the Lord came to me saying, here's the first message that Jeremiah ever got. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I consecrated you. I have appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Now this is consistent with Psalm 139. In Psalm 139, I read to you last time, and I won't go back over it, but I think you will remember Psalm 139 because it is so unique, where David says, you formed me from my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, and in your book they were all written, the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there wasn't one of them. And that's very parallel to this. God says, not only do I deem you at that point as innocent, but I knew you then. You were a person then, and you were known to me then. Not only did I know you, but I had already set you apart for that determination that you would be a prophet. You were mine, even then. In Ezekiel chapter 16, another remarkable statement that expands one's understanding of what I just read. You might say, well, that's reserved for a prophet. That's reserved for a prophet. Well, it's also what David said was true about him. Well, you say, well, those are special people. Jeremiah's a special person. David's a special person. Maybe the Lord knows them in a special way. Maybe He has saving intent toward them. And after all, they grew to adulthood and they believed. But it's much broader than that. Verse 15 of Ezekiel 16. This is a terrible indictment of Jerusalem. Terrible indictment. Amazing chapter, really. Verse 15, you trusted in your beauty, you played the harlot because of your fame, you poured out your harlotries on every passerby who might be willing, you prostituted yourself with every idolater that passed by. You took some of your clothes made for yourself, high places of various colors, played the harlot on them, which should never come about nor happen. This is a very graphic picture. He pictures Israel like an unfaithful woman. And after all that God had done for her, picked her up. Back in verse 4, on the day of your birth, your navel cord wasn't cut. You weren't washed with water for cleansing. You weren't rubbed with salt, which is what they did to reduce any infection. You weren't wrapped in cloths. Nobody took care of you. You were just thrown in a field. That's what he says about Israel. You just were thrown in a field. But I picked you up, and I washed you, and I cleaned you, and I dressed you, and I multiplied you. Verse 7, you grew up, you became tall, you were well formed, and I passed by you and saw you, and behold, you were at the time for love. You reached your maturity, and I spread my skirt over you and covered your nakedness, and I swore to you and entered into a covenant with you. You became mine. This is God saying, you became my nation. I brought you out of Egypt, and I picked you up in the middle of a field, and I cleaned you up, and I made you my bride, and I bathed you, and I washed you, and I anointed you, and now you're a harlot. Now you're a prostitute. Now you're dressed with prostitute's clothes and you go out in the middle of the streets and you play the harlot with everybody. In verse 20, you took your sons and daughters whom you had borne to me and you sacrificed them to idols to be devoured. Here they are again burning up their babies. And then verse 21, you slaughtered whose children? My children. Underline my. You slaughtered my children. You offered them up to idols by causing them to pass through the fire. You can't do that with my children. My children. That's a broad and general statement. My children. Turn to Job again. We looked at this briefly last time, but it fits in here. Job 3. Job is in trouble, and you know that. Whatever could go wrong did. Chapter 2, verse 9, his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die." Just curse God and die. Can't get any worse than this. God can't be any harder on you than He's been. Just curse God and die. Job didn't listen to his wife. Verse 10 says, "In all this Job did not sin with his lips." But he did show us his pain. Verse 11, "Why did I not die at birth? Just come out of the womb and die. Why did those knees receive me? And why the breasts that I should suck? For now I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept then. I would have been at rest with kings and with counselors of the earth and princes." And what he's saying here is it would have been better off if I'd have been stillborn. Verse 16, it would have been better to be a miscarriage. It would have been better to be an infant that never saw the light. Because verse 17 says, "There, if that were true of me, I would be in a place where there's no wickedness and where the weary are at rest." This is the most righteous man on the planet at that time. The most righteous man. Verse 8 of chapter 1, "There is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil." This is God's man. This is a man with a sound theology and a sound faith. And he says, frankly, life is so bad, I would be far better off if I had been stillborn, if I had been miscarried. Because then I would have been at rest. He's not talking about annihilation, because he said, I would be with kings and counselors and with princes. I would be with people. I would be with those who are at rest. This is not annihilation. And it certainly can't be hell, because if there's one thing true about hell, it is that there is no rest. Certainly, if he's going to be in hell, he wouldn't cease from wickedness. The only possibility is heaven. So you see in the Old Testament, there are texts that indicate to us the innocent condition. That is not that they are not depraved, not that they are not the possessors of a sin nature and bear the culpability for Adam's sin, but that there is no willful unbelief, rebellion, and sinful behavior which can be held against them because they do not convincingly grasp those issues. They are innocent. More than that, the verses that I've just read to you indicate that they are in a special way God's. Even the children of pagan idolaters being offered on sacrificial altars are my children. And they are so much God's that should they be miscarried, they go to a place where they're with others at rest and free from wickedness. But there's even more. You can go from innocence to ownership to salvation in the Old Testament. Turn to 2 Samuel. This is most helpful. 2 Samuel chapter 12. 2 Samuel chapter 12. You know the story. This is David and Bathsheba. An infamous incident in which David committed adultery with a woman who was not his wife, and in order to continue that relationship in an ongoing way, made sure that her husband Uriah was killed. So David was not only an adulterer,